Hello and welcome to the Dr. Ayaz Safi Podcast. I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Dipankar Sengupta. Dr. Dipankar's professional journey has been marked by a range of experiences, spanning roles in academia and industry, currently serving as a senior lecturer in health data analytics at the University of Westminster. In this episode, Dr. Dipankar and I engage in a detailed conversation about data science, bioinformatics, and AI. Hi, Dipankar. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Ayaz. Thanks for inviting me here today.
It's a pleasure. How are you, Dipankar?
I'm doing okay.
Good. Well, good
Good
to
to
see you.
have this short break. Yeah, indeed.
Definitely.
Nice to
Yeah.
meet you after a while.
Yeah. No. Thank you. Um, Dipankar, I want to start with a broad question of what is a data science and how does it benefit us?
Right. So, firstly, if we look, data science, this is something not new. This has been existing since ages.
Mm,
It's only we are not familiar with the concept or with the term. Now, uh, since school, if we look, we start learning about statistics. If we are trying to understand data science, we need to understand that if we are talking about data science, we are primarily talking about data, and then the science, which is primarily the techniques or the tools which can help us to understand this data in a better way.
mm,
So we actually unknowingly start using data science even we are small. It's just we are not aware that that's what data science is. And data science is something which involves lots of different kinds of techniques
mhm,
which we learn gradually. So, knowingly, unknowingly, all of us are using data science in different ways because all of us are trying to understand things around us. And we can understand this better if we have the information in form of data available.
mm.
So, data science is something which has been defined in a more refined form or in a more technical term, and this basically is the science that helps us to understand the data. And it's not only the science, but also an art because you can understand it, but how do you present it?
I see.
And presenting is a form of art. So I usually tell my students when we are
Mm,
talking about data science, it's not only the science, but also the art of understanding and presenting the learnings from our data.
Absolutely. And I think that's very important because as an expert, for example, or the students coming to be an expert, they could understand the data, they can analyze it, but it's also important how to convey that message to present it so that the layperson or the people in general public can also understand what the data, what the result is actually showing or conveying as the message. So again, another maybe naive type of question uh, here is data science different from the AI?
Now, I won't say it's different.
Mm,
Now, if we are talking about data science, as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of different kind of techniques or technology which are involved to understand this data. And if we look into this aspects, if we look into the very basics, the
mm,
basics starts from foundation in mathematics, the mathematical concepts. The next is the statistical concepts.
yeah.
The next is machine learning. And then there is also artificial intelligence. And
Mm,
when all of these things come together, they combine and give us this realm of data science. So AI is something which forms the core of data science.
I see. And with your experience both in academia and in industry that you've been involved in, what are the key differences you've seen in how data science or the AI are approached and how are they implemented in different environments?
Right. So talking about first, let me talk about
Mm,
industry. So
sure.
in industry, mostly, uh, now again, the industry can be there can be two different kind of aspects. One
Hmm.
is the product based aspects, and the other could be service or solution based aspects.
Hmm.
Now, in a service or a solution based aspect, the business is primarily trying to design a solution for its client.
Uh-huh.
And in such cases, data science or AI can play a key role because many a times customers or the businesses, they don't understand what's happening with their business. So if they have their data, they can get novel insights or new insights from their
Hmm.
data. Now, here I can give you a tiny example
Sure.
which I
Sure.
use in my class.
Hmm.
And this is an example from a popular retail distributor based in United States.
Sure. Yeah.
And what they did was, what they observed was, especially during the weekends, the sales of beer, which is
Mhm.
an alcoholic drink, and diapers, it was comparatively on a higher side
Mhm.
in comparison to the rest of the week. And they could find this because uh, their data showed it to them. And there
Yeah.
is a reason if we understand this on a customer basis, because
Hmm.
on Fridays, when we are closer to the weekend, families would like to relax over the weekend and they
Yeah.
want to enjoy, as well as some of them may have to take care of their young ones. So, nobody would want a scenario that you are enjoying your weekend with some nice barbecue, having a beer, and
Mm.
running to the closest shop to get a pack of diapers.
Mm.
So, that was a trend they observed. And observing this trend, what they did was they bought the diaper selling unit close to the alcoholic selling unit, and this
Ah,
further helped them to increase their sales. Now, this was only possible because the business could track from their sales data that that's what happening, especially on the Fridays.
I see.
So that's one example of how data science can
Mm.
help in case of industries where it can help you to understand much about what's happening with your data. There are several other examples
Yeah.
like online retailers like
Mm.
Amazon. Most of us nowadays are using these retailers to buy something or other.
Yeah.
Now, even if we look them, what we will find is we buy something and then they tend to, or even if we visit something, the next time when we are visiting Amazon page, they try to suggest, why don't you look into
Yes.
this may be
Yeah.
interesting.
And
And
this
that's
applies.
again
Yeah.
happening with the data. So
Absolutely.
there
And
are
this.
several other examples.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even Netflix.
Yes. Yeah. I was
Netflix
gonna mention that
also,
now. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it uses a similar kind of technique. So
Mm.
if you look into industry, in industry, this is primarily being used to
Mm.
understand the customer, to understand their own business, and then how they can tailor products towards specific customers, and how they can also tailor their own products or come with schemes which can increase their sales. So
Absolutely.
that's on the industry aspect.
Hmm.
If we talk about academia, then this is being used a lot in academic research because, again, there in different domains there are lots of data being
Yeah.
generated. Like I primarily is I'm based in life sciences, and
Yeah.
most of my research is based on healthcare.
Hmm.
Now, if we talk about healthcare, there is tons of data being generated, and you need techniques that can help you to better understand this data. So
Mm.
again, data science can play a key role. And because of this has also become an integral part of academic teaching,
Hmm.
because you need to train students that they learn these skills, these techniques. So when they graduate, they are ready to either face the industrial market scenario, or they
Hmm.
are ready to face an academic research scenario. So in either of the cases, having some sound knowledge of data science skills can really boost up
Mm.
your entire skill set, irrespective of which domain you are working.
Absolutely, and I think I was gonna mention earlier when you talked about the Amazon and Netflix in particular. Even for example, the other platforms, social media platform, Facebook or YouTube, you go and
Exactly. Yeah.
watch something, and then they keep suggesting something similar to you until you either watched it or you just kind of ignore it. Similar applies to maybe like some of the markets here in the UK. They have points-based cards, for example. Every time you shop, they give you some points, and next time you go, that shelf is being filled again, and then so that points can actually does encourage someone to go and buy something because it works a little bit cheap, and then plus you get the points. So it's a very psychological kind of a game, but as you mentioned, that all is data driven because they see what you're doing, and they can track our behavior and our needs, and therefore the product again is being placed there for us to have. But but yeah, it's a phenomenal area. I mean, to kind of explore here. And Dipankar, as a senior lecturer in data analytics, what are some of the most innovative or disruptive applications of data science and or AI that you are currently exploring or teaching across the different sectors, or especially to the students, for example? Like what should they be in particular be aware of? Okay, like you mentioned, when they kind of go to the market, they need to understand and have some sound experience. What are your views on that?
Right. So this is a very interesting question, as, and I think there recently or in the past year or so, there really has been boom, and there are lots of tools we are seeing which are coming into the market, which are they are pitching themselves that they can do lots of
Hmm.
things. Now, one of the things which I am currently doing, especially with the students, is I'm trying to make them aware
Hmm.
that it's not always you can blindly trust what's being presented in front of you.
Hmm.
And you do it on every aspect of your life. You don't buy something simply uh, based on someone's recommendation. You
Yeah.
try to understand, you do your research, and then purchase the particular thing.
Hmm.
The same thing is there with data science or AI based products. You first need to understand how it works or why it works in a particular way.
Hmm.
Now, I can give you an example of one of
Sure.
the popular AI tools which is currently there in the market, which is kind of disruptive,
Uh-huh.
as you mentioned, is ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
quite disruptive, and when it launched, and even now, all of us are in awe that
Yeah.
wow, it's doing so many things for us. If I give it a problem, it's giving us a solution.
Hmm.
Now, that's really good. But is that something 100% accurate? Is that something you can blindly trust? That's something you need to understand. And
Yeah.
for that understanding, you need to understand how ChatGPT has been designed and
Hmm.
how it works. Now, in my teaching, I actually cover the details of this when
Hmm.
I'm teaching machine learning aspect, which is again a key component of data
Yeah.
science. And when I talk about machine learning, I talk about different kind of learning algorithms. And there is a particular class of a learning algorithm under which ChatGPT falls. So taking that as an example, I try to explain to student how it works and
Hmm.
what are its flaws. It's important. It's a good tool. Now one thing we need to understand, it's a good tool.
Yeah.
It can give us some prelim information, but we can't blindly trust it. one of the key things which I can tell about ChatGPT is, just to give a brief,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's based on something called as semi-supervised learning technique. That's what the basic machine learning approach it follows.
Mhm.
And there are two aspects which are there in such kind of designs. One is they use language models, they
Uh-huh.
learn from the language, and then the kind of learning approach they use is called as a reinforcement learning approach.
Okay.
Now, something interesting here, this is the same approach, reinforcement learning, which is also being used for training the robots.
Hmm.
Robots also learn via a similar algorithm, reinforcement learning.
Okay.
And just like you can't blindly believe a robot for a
Yeah.
task, you can't blindly believe ChatGPT.
Mhm.
One of the common problems, especially like if you ask ChatGPT to write something scientific, you will find it kind of uses a specific pattern to
Hmm.
write things and kind of specific words it tend to use.
Yes.
It also kind of generates the references which may not be accurate.
Hmm.
It may now again, what we need to understand is ChatGPT is evolving as its language model is continuously being updated.
Mhm.
Now when it's improvising itself, so if we look like 6 years how ChatGPT worked, it was generating references which never
Uh-huh.
existed. Now it doesn't creates them, it
Mhm.
picks up something which is existing, but it doesn't authenticates whether that's a credible source or not.
I see.
It can pick up a reference from a retracted paper.
Hmm.
Now, for a general audience, a
Yeah.
retracted paper is a scientific paper which was published,
Hmm.
but it was withdrawn later because there were issues reported with the paper,
I see. Okay. That's very
which can
interesting.
be
Yeah.
associated with their data also.
Hmm.
Now, if you are citing something like this, that's a problem because that's
Yeah.
not a credible paper. Now, that's why it's very important
Mhm.
that when we are using any AI based tool, we carefully first understand how it works.
Yeah.
It's similar to any tool we may use
Mhm.
physically.
Yeah.
Like, even if we want to use a new Hoover, we first understand how that Hoover functions
Yeah.
before start using it to clean. So that's the same thing with the AI, with all the AI tools. They are innovative,
Mhm.
they are disruptive, but we need to understand how they work, how they function, whether they are giving credible results or not. Like, I can tell you, there are really some helpful AI based tools also,
Yeah.
which can actually ease lot of our manual work.
Mhm.
Like, there are tools which if you use can look for the credible papers, that is the
Mhm.
papers which have been published and they have been indexed in specific resources like
Yeah.
PubMed.
Mm.
They can go through the entire PubMed library and find out the key things for you, give out the gist of that information, give out the key data sources. Now,
And
tools like,
what would be that? What tool is that?
okay, so there is a tool called Evidence Hunt,
Okay.
which can be used.
Mhm.
There is another one called Consensus.
Okay.
So I can recommend if someone is
Yeah.
trying to dig into the
Mhm.
literature for finding information, these
Yeah.
are two AI tools which can actually speed up your work.
Okay. Mhm.
So
And sorry, so for example, if somebody is conducting a systematic review, for example,
right.
and then because there's tons of papers you got to scan through and so on. So based on your recommendation, these are the two tools that could be utilized to help. with ease that pressure of scanning everything.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting to know. Yeah, and in your opinion, what would be or what are do you think are the biggest obstacles to the general adaptation of the data-driven solution? For example, we talked about the different industries. You gave some examples, and so do you think these data-driven solution across different um, environments or industries could could kind of pose some sort of obstacles as well? And if so, what would be the best way to overcome them, including AI? Because there's lots of discussion going on, especially from a man who actually co-founded one of the AI, like Elon Musk, for example. He's now saying that AI is more dangerous, for example. Um, and some other people, experts, are also giving their views on it. If they are so dangerous, why make them, for example, in the first place, and then come out and tell the public it's dangerous? And if it is, how can the general public, for example, could avoid that danger or overcome it if it actually happens?
Yeah, that's a good question I asked. Now, there is something very funny here.
Mm,
Means, as you mentioned here, like one of the key persons who has been a key contributor, but
yeah,
is kind of worried. Now, I think anything if we see around us, it's something riskier. For an
yes,
example, a car.
yeah,
It's riskier. Or even using any electrical socket for charging something, it's riskier.
yes,
Everything is having risk. We can't
mm,
deny that. And so is AI too. It has
mm,
its own risk. Now, how do we mitigate it? Like,
yeah,
if we want to mitigate a risk with a car, how do we mitigate it? We ensure that we implement appropriate safety measures
yeah,
so that even if there is any kind of accident, it can minimize that or prevent the loss. Similarly, for electrical sockets, we make specific installations that can prevent any kind of mishappening.
yeah,
Now, the thing with AI is also the same. We need policies
mm,
and we need to have that understanding. And the most important part, we need to have the ethics, the
yeah,
people who are designing it, and even the people who are using it. Because even if we look into our the generic scenario on the internet, there are lots of hackers who are
yeah,
there who can hack and who can do lots of things over the web.
mm,
Similarly, there are not lots of scammers who are there who kind of trying to impersonate you or try to mimic someone and
mm,
try to make harm. So there is a risk, and that risk is here too with the AI.
mm,
And I think that's why it's very important now that, especially for the younger generation, that they learn or they are being taught the basics about the technology. They are made to understand how this technology works, what kind of ethics they should follow.
mm,
Because again, what's really important is more we spread the awareness, more
yeah,
we spread the knowledge, people will understand everything. Or again, we will have a scenario similar to what's happening or what has been happening with the vaccines.
yes,
Some of the people easily accept it, but
yeah,
then there is a cohort in the population who kind of don't believe in vaccines, and
yeah,
they have
yeah,
their own understanding, and they have made this understanding
yeah,
without a proper knowledge base. So
absolutely, yeah,
I think that's what is required. We need that knowledge base, and especially in our academic institutions,
mm,
I think we need a policy where we make it mandate that all the students are being taught at each level. Now, again, we can't have a one off scenario
yeah,
that we do a session once in level 4 and then we
yeah,
stop. We need to make it in a continuous process so the student understand. Especially, we need to encourage them use it. and
mm,
then ask them to find, what do you think? What are the benefits? What are the flaws? It's something we are doing with our generic whatever we are teaching to them.
mhm,
We need to make this also as a part of that. Like, for an example, in my teaching in my module,
mhm,
where I am specially teaching this aspect of data science and I tend to ask them to use these tools to generate, for an example, if I'm teaching them programming,
mhm.
so to generate solutions from the programming and then compare
Yeah.
what they are finding.
Wow. And 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 Dipankar, also you mentioned about the policies, the ethics, especially in academia, for example, and teaching students at every level. I think that that's a very good point because given that the enhancement of technology nowadays, for example, and the access to the social media platforms, and there is so much information out there, because people just wants to kind of talk about certain topics that are either trending or important, but they're just speaking out of blue. They're not experts. They're not just kind of spreading the actual information. Even, for example, data science or AI, there's so much information. People will kind of say this will make your life easier. See, this is how it happens. It can generate the whole essay in a minute and stuff. Yes, it does, but as you outlined, this is descriptive. Who knows this is correct, for example, and so on. And I think information like the one you and I are now talking, you are the expert of this, and this raw information, actual information, I think that's what is needed to be out there, especially with the younger generation who are going to be the future leaders. And often I worry about their critical thinking, their critical mindset, for example, which that's something we teach in academia, for example. Like, you got to be critically able to analyze things. And especially now with so much access to these information via different platforms, I think that's one of the things that has been impacted within the younger generation. So as the technology is so rapidly increasing and changing, how do you see the field of either data science, AI, or data analytics, for example, would evolve in the next 5 or 10 years, and how would that impact the younger generation even more?
Uh, so again, if you look, this has been evolving over
Hmm.
a period of time. Even uh, if you look into our past or our history, this was something which was already there. Like, if you look into the Second World War, one of the pioneers of AI, Alan Turing, he played a key role during the Second World War with his inventions.
Hmm.
And in fact, Alan Turing at the same period, he kind of gave uh, the basics of what we have right now. He kind of gave us what artificial intelligence is going to be all about. And he did, and what he did was he said a very simple thing. What we need is machines which are as intelligent as human. That's what he said.
Hmm.
And that's what, even if we look, we are trying to do right now. And there has been lots of development which has happened over the past 70 or 80 years since uh, Alan Turing gave us that basic definition. However, with the evolution of technology, advancement of machines, this is happening now more rapidly,
Hmm.
especially in last 5 or 10 years. Like, if you look into Chat GPT, which
Yeah.
OpenAI has developed, it's not something they did immediately. They
Yeah.
have been doing it from the past 5 or 6 years, or probably more. Means I started following their work from 2018. I
Hmm.
started what OpenAI was doing, and the first thing which I read about them was they can. In 2018, I read that they are trying, or they have launched a tool or
Hmm.
an algorithm which, given few keywords, can write an entire essay for you. And that was a big thing way back
Yeah.
in 2018. Wow, that's going to be so fascinating.
Yeah.
And when they finally, because they also kept on working on their tool, they refined it, they tried to address the flaw. And we could see in next 4 and 5 years, they had a more refined product.
mm,
Now, one thing is for sure, this is not going to stop. This is going to keep on evolving.
yeah,
And we may see more such tools or more improvised tools in next 5 or 10 years. What's important for us is
mm,
we can't avoid this. This is going to happen because, like when the electricity was first generated, when the first bulb was ignited, it kept on evolving, and we
yeah,
have now modern tools. Now, the
mm,
same thing is going to happen. We are going to get more advanced form of tools, and this is something which is going to be integrated across different domains. It can actually make things easier,
mm.
but what's important to understand is they can't replace humans.
Okay. That's, I
That
think, one
will,
of my follow-up
yeah,
question.
that
Yeah,
will
later.
never be
Yeah.
possible,
Mm,
because I think that's one of the kind of things people have feared,
yeah.
that it's going to replace
Mm,
humans. Now, that's something difficult. You can't
mm,
replace a human because, again, this is a machine and you're training the machine
mhm,
on a specific way.
yeah.
It can't have a human construct, means we have our own human construct, and all our decision making capacity is
Mm,
based on the complexity of neurons we are having. Now, they are going to learn, they are going to make certain recommendations, but
yeah.
it's again going to be humans
Mm,
who are going to take that final
yeah.
decision, accept or to reject what they are suggesting.
Mhm,
That's why in the world of AI, something which the researchers who are working in AI are focused now is something called as interpretable AI.
okay. Mm,
That is, you can interpret or understand what AI is suggesting to you. If you look now, what we are doing in ChatGPT, we
yeah.
put something, it gives us, we accept, and we think we are
Yeah.
done. But is that interpretable? Are we really understanding
Yeah.
what it's giving to us? So that's what really we are moving in. We are moving in a realm where
Mhm,
we need to have an interpretable form of AI, which can help us or aid us in making decisions. It's supposed to reduce our efforts, not
yeah.
replace us.
Yeah. And that basis, for example, but you mentioned that the AI and these other tools, they are gonna come more into our lives, for example, and could be part of our life, and also to kind of us being able to efficiently and effectively utilize them. What skills or mindset will be crucial for the next generation of data scientists and analysts to
I
have
think
to cope
what's
with these
what's
things? Yeah.
yeah, I think what's primarily would be important is to have the basic understanding of the concepts.
Mm,
That's the most fundamental thing. And when we say basic understanding, it's not only about the technical understanding,
mm,
but also having an understanding of the data.
mm,
Like, for an example, if I want to develop a solution for a telecommunication
yeah.
business, but if I don't understand their data, even if I can design something for them, it won't make sense because uh, I'm not understanding the data.
Yeah.
For an example, when we go to a doctor with
Mm,
a certain problem, doctor, they do a diagnosis and they may recommend us for a test,
mm,
and those test numbers helps a doctor to make a decision, like, is there something worrying or not? Now, a doctor is specializing in that data.
mm,
That's why they are able to make decisions. Similarly, for people who want to work in data science, you need to understand that the basic of not only the techniques but also the basics of the data. And a very fundamental thing of the data can be to
Mm.
understand whether this is a qualitative data or a quantitative
Yeah.
data.
Hmm.
If it's a quantitative data, what kind of data type it is? If it's a
Yeah.
qualitative data, what kind of data type it is?
Mm.
That's a very fundamental thing. Because if you understand that,
Mm.
then if you are looking into any specialized data, you can easily say, oh, this looks like to me a nominal data.
Mm.
This looks like to me an ordinal data.
Yeah.
So if I have that basic understanding, I can think of, okay, what kind of solutions I can design.
Absolutely. And that needs to be kind of embedded into the education sector, for example, right from the beginning and throughout, in order to, for example, um,
Exactly. I
yeah,
think that that's what is required, because if we think of doing it like once in a year or once in
yeah,
a 3-year degree and then expect them to, okay, they have an understanding,
mm,
because they forget it if you do it like in a semester and then you don't make them use it or try to bring it back again, they tend to lose the focus. So
mm,
that's something is important. We need to make this an integral part of our system.
I think so. And based on your international experience, Dipankar, you worked across different countries, different sectors. How do you see the AI and also the data science aspects, the whole landscape across these different regions, some of the developing countries, some of the developed countries, and of course the accessibility and the development of these tools are going to be very. Do you think what would be the opportunities or challenges that this will present on a global collaboration and knowledge sharing stage? For example, if one country has less access to it, the other one has an advanced level, would that pose any challenges or any opportunities?
I think that's a fair question. Means there is a kind of disparity which
Mm,
is there, because the kind of challenges which are there, it's different in different countries,
mm,
and so is the opportunities. But what's something here we need to understand is
mm,
the technology, especially the technology which data science is using at the moment. For an example, the two most popular languages which are being used now, when I say languages, these are computer programming
yeah.
languages which are being used at the moment for data science. One is Python, the
Mm,
other one is R. And both these languages are open sources,
mm,
which means they anyone can use it. They can, if they learn these languages, they are free to use it irrespective of their location. So even if someone is based in a low income country
yeah.
or a middle or a well developed country, irrespective of
Mm,
this of their location, if they can have that basic understanding and learning of the language, they can use this to develop the solution in any part they are based in. Because again, different locations poses or give opportunities to addressing different kind of challenges.
yes.
But what's and again, that's why I think, especially for a domain like data science, what we
Mm,
need to promote is open source solutions or open source learnings, where you can learn anything or learn about the platforms which are free to use,
yeah.
so that you don't need to pay to like big products
Yeah.
and lots of money to use their solutions. You can
Mm,
design your own solution.
yeah. And so did I, if I'm heard correctly, the Python and also the R, the two program languages, they are free to access from anywhere across the world?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. And with the, I know you mentioned about the ethics aspects earlier, but with the increasing emphasis on the ethical and responsibility of aspect of the AI and also the other tools, how can one incorporate these consideration into research and teaching? Because I know you're doing teaching, and on this, and also you are a researcher and this one of the senior researcher on this area as well. How do we ensure that, okay, we kind of took the ethical aspect as well as the responsibility aspects into consideration here? Any views on that at all?
Right. So that's again a very important point to consider. Like right now, what we can do is we can make the young generation
Mm,
train about what's now again there. This is something which can be a tricky situation
mm,
because what I may consider ethical may be non-ethical for someone
yeah,
else,
yeah,
and the same scenario can actually uh, it can be in a vice versa situation.
mm,
Now, what we really need to understand is here a simple thing we need to make students or the younger generation understand is any kind of work which you are doing or solution you are developing is not harming anyone in any means, neither
okay,
in terms of their health or any kind of physical way or any kind of monetary way. So it's simply designing, not designing something
mm,
which can impact or harm someone. Means that could be the simplest message we can pass to the students. Don't
mhm,
don't do anything like that. The other thing is what I'm trying to do is in my research as well as I'm trying to include in my teaching also, I'm trying to promote the fair principles.
yeah, yeah,
Now, so for the people who are not aware of this, FAIR
mm,
it's an acronym,
mm,
and what it stands for is F stands for findable, A stands for accessible, I stands for interoperable, and R stands for reusable.
very interesting.
Now, this the FAIR principles is something which again it has been existing for ages, but it was properly formulated sometime in 2014, and since then lots of developments which are being made.
Mm,
It's being promoted that we follow these principles. So what, even for the students who are working with me for their projects,
mm,
I try to ask them, you need to not only write your thesis, but also if you are designing any solution, you are writing your code, you are using any kind of data, you need to make them or present them in this form.
mm,
F, findable. That is, even after a period, if someone is trying to find about a specific research, they can easily do so.
yeah,
Accessible. That is, it's available. For an
mm,
example, I encourage students to use Mendeley data.
yeah,
If they have generated any kind of data, they can deposit it there. And if I want some other students to use it later, I can refer them. You go and use it from that resource.
mm,
Other thing I encourage them is to use repositories like GitHub, where they can submit their codes and I can ask others to use, or if we make it open, anyone can use it. So that's accessible.
mm,
Interoperable, again, try to develop something which can be used across platforms, and reusable is something which can be used time and again. And this is not only specific, I would say, specific to something which is computational in nature.
mhm,
This can apply across any domain, any kind of research, because that's what we need. If what Alan Turing did way back in
mm,
1940s and 50s, if that was not available, probably we won't had that base to further work upon.
yeah.
So that's something is really important at this point.
I think so, and I think following those steps or guidelines that you convey to the students, hopefully will kind of ensure that the AI system or the data science or the data analytics system will hopefully be able to play a fair, transparent, and accountable role for both as the machine, for example, and also the individual as a researcher or as a person in a position where playing around with these tools, for example. So that would kind of increase that fairness, I guess, if those guidelines are followed. In your view, based on the research you conducting and also your expertise, what would be some of the most promising or underexplored areas of data science or AI that could lead to a significant breakthrough or innovation in the near future that I know you talked about in the next 5 or 10 years is going to only evolve and it maybe gets bigger and better. But what is it that you may know that we don't? I mean, because you're the expert and you can kind of see that okay, this is going to break through and then it's going to be really amazing, or this is going to be really something that we don't want to kind of, for example. So what do we watch out for in the next near future?
I think what I would say is what I mentioned some time
Mm,
back, and that's is interpretable AI. So that's something, the interpretability aspect, which is kind of missing at the moment.
mm,
We are getting lot of solutions, lot of developments, but it's most of the times it's difficult for us to understand why we are getting a result like this,
mm,
or if I change a particular factor, how this is going to change my outcomes and why it would do so.
mm,
So that's something which can be a key thing or a key driver in such scenarios. And this can make a great revolution in
mm,
all our aspects. For a simple example is how my blood sugar may vary
mm,
if I am taking a certain amount of food, a particular amount of food, a particular kind of food, how this can vary my blood sugar
mm,
over a certain period of time. If I can see this and if I can see the values, okay, if I'm taking this 100 grams, my blood sugar may rise till this level.
mm,
But if I, in, along with this, if I include something else, this may further lower my blood sugar level.
yeah.
And there can be an interpretability aspect, which in turn is explaining the metabolism associated with that particular food type,
Mm,
also taking into consideration my uh, physical information about the body, like my weight, my height, my past data, my BMI,
mm,
my physical activity. So that's what I would see would be important in next 5 or 10 years, and something which can be a game changer about how AI is being used.
mm. I mean that's very interesting. In particular in the health or public health sector, for example, as you mentioned. Um, and Dipankar, last year in particular, we saw some university students, especially international students. Again, that one of the questions before the AI or the data science utilization in developing countries and more in developed countries. Here in the UK, for example, they've used AI to improve their assessments. And then, of course, little did they know, for example, that okay, there are systems that could track it, and then they were penalized for the plagiarism. What is your uh, message to those students, for example, those who are using the AI aspect, and then how best they can either avoid it or how best they could embed it into their learnings for the betterment?
Right. So I think first of all, what's really important is we need to look, there are tools which
Mm,
can actually help you in improving your
yeah,
writing. There are such tools like, for an example, Grammarly.
yeah,
Now that's a tool which doesn't changes
yeah,
what your contact is, but it can help you to improvise your writing, especially the grammatical mistakes.
hmm,
And that's one of the problems, especially international students face coming from non-native English
yeah,
speaking countries. So that's one of the problems, and that make them drive towards AI based
yeah,
tools to come up with answers or responses that can fetch them uh, higher marks.
hmm,
But what's what's impacting this is they are losing their, what we discussed earlier, to their intellectual capability, their
yes,
thinking capability.
yeah,
So what's really important for the students to understand, and it's not only, I would say, international student,
Yeah.
but for also domestic students,
Mm,
is the tools. You need to use the tools which can help you to improvise or enhance your writing skills, not to replace your writing, and more importantly, the thinking skills. That's
yeah.
that's more important, because if you stop thinking, you are giving machine the opportunity to be smarter than you.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
don't want that situation that a machine is more smarter than us,
It's a very good
because
point.
we are developing the machine.
Yeah.
Machine is not developing us.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about the Grammarly, for example. Um, in my estimation, last year I mean, there was some lots of challenges across the academia because when the AI chat GPT came out, there were no policies, and that was something you mentioned here as well. And universities were like, okay, what do we do? And they were coming up with stuff. So everything, including Grammarly, they've classified as a AI tool, for example, said, okay, that would be also classified as a category B offense if it's observed. And this is where some of the students were kind of affected. So is Grammarly of course it's a machine and stuff. It does maybe fall into the AI, but is that also would that be considered as a plagiarism?
uh, Now, again, I won't say it's a. Again, it depends upon the
Yeah,
policies
yeah,
about the university,
hmm,
what they are classifying as a Gen AI tool
yeah,
and what's not as a Gen AI tool.
hmm, hmm,
Now, if you ask me, I won't consider Grammarly to be a Gen AI tool, because
hmm.
it's not generating text for you.
Okay,
What it's suggesting is an alternative form of your text,
hmm,
which you can either accept or dismiss. So it's
okay,
giving us that control, that whether we accept a suggestion or whether we reject the
yeah,
situation.
hmm,
Now, Grammarly can be actually helpful in such cases, because it can help you to address those grammatical mistakes, or the mistakes you may
hmm,
have with use of tenses, which can be a problem
yeah,
for a non-native speaker.
yeah,
Whereas something which is Gen AI is, you give a minimal input and it's doing all the tasks for you.
yeah, yeah. And
So
and they do it very descriptively, isn't it?
yes, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's a problem.
yeah.
Now, what I can give an example
Sure.
from my own
Yeah, sure.
experience. What I did was, I actually, because there are, again, lots of tools which can help you to detect AI. So I have tried and tested with these different tools,
Hmm,
and then I got a most optimal one, which where I can actually check all the student scripts,
hmm,
and then it kinds of gives a probabilistic estimation
hmm,
from the text, that what are the chances this text has been written by human,
hmm,
or it's a Gen AI generated, or it's a mixed content.
hmm.
And this, it gives us a prediction on line by line.
I see.
So that kind of gives you a good indication of
Hmm,
what are the chances that a human is written it or a machine is written it. Now, again, there are some people who may actually not agree with me, and they
hmm.
would say, well, there are high scenarios that there may be false positives. Well, that's true. There may be false positives. There may be also false negatives.
Yes.
And that's the thing which is there with any kind of solutions you develop. There will be always some false positives,
Hmm.
there will be always some false negatives, and that's why the human intelligence needs to play here. You,
Yeah.
again, even as an assessor or an evaluator, you can't blindly trust the result there.
Hmm.
You need to bring your human intelligence into consideration, whether you think what it's suggesting is really true or not. And you can actually further have a substantial evidence on this if you
Hmm.
look into the references.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And most of the time they don't match,
Right.
and when you
So,
go
so,
and yeah,
so you can clearly get evidences from there whether
yeah,
this is students' own work or not.
yeah,
Now, what this is important for an assessor also, not only for students,
mm,
that you can't always blindly trust AI tools when
no,
you are marking. You
absolutely,
need to bring the intelligence here too. For an example, all of us use Turnitin,
yeah,
which kind of gives us the similarity on plagiarism.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes we see there is a high plagiarism of 60%.
yeah,
Now, if we blindly trust it, there are possibilities we are not giving the student an opportunity,
yeah,
because many a times the similarity may come from a specific template they are using,
yes, yeah, yeah. No, that's true.
and
Yeah,
and it may also be there because of the references,
yeah,
because someone else may have also used the references.
yeah.
So we need to dig deeper and look into the specific sites
Mm.
where we are getting the similarity.
Absolutely. And going back to that, the human intelligence aspect, for example, in this case, for us as academics as well, when like I totally agree, when we're reading the work, we shouldn't just assume, okay, whatever the Turnitin or whatever the AI tool says, that's 100% accurate, because again, we are then relying on machine to tell us. So therefore, our own intelligence utilization is very important here for the again for the fairness and transparency for the students. You mentioned earlier about the jobs replacement and AI, and you gave a very clear outline and a hope to many people out there who are confused. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that again a little bit, because lots of people that I speak with, there is a kind of a fear that AI will replace many jobs, and there's some research into it as well, and so on. If AI is going to replace many jobs, which types of jobs would it be mostly affected?
I think that's a difficult and a tricky
Mm,
situation,
okay.
because a lot will depend upon how AI is being used for,
Hmm.
and what's the purpose. But as I mentioned, the main thing about AI is to ease the workload or reduce the workload and not replace the humans, because
Yeah.
again you need humans to control it or to regulate it. A simple example of this is,
Hmm.
if we look into like 70 or 80 years back,
Hmm.
how the things were managed in the kitchen.
Yeah.
There were utensils or tools
Hmm.
like for making the spices.
Yeah.
They were kind of manual grinders which
Yes.
our grandmas used to
Yeah.
grind the spices and then use it for cooking,
Yeah.
which required a lot of manual effort.
Yeah.
Gradually, we started getting electric grinders, which you can plug in,
Yeah.
put the spices, mix it, and then use it.
Yeah.
And now we are having gadgets which are kind of portable. You can carry, you can use batteries, you can put the spices, grind it,
Yeah.
and use it.
Hmm.
So if you look here, what has happened is there has been an advancement in the technology
Mm.
for addressing a specific problem. However, in none of the cases a human has been replaced.
Yeah.
Yeah, human has been there in all the cases.
Yeah. Hmm.
Their manual workload has reduced.
Yeah.
So the same thing is there with AI. It can help you to design tools or specific challenges that can reduce your effort or workload. For an example, in a healthcare scenario,
Yeah, that was my
there
follow-up question. Like, how do we apply this to the public health or public health sector, especially in education as well, that we are in, for example? How does AI challenge or applies to us here?
right. So if we look into the healthcare
Mm,
scenario, uh, there is lots of data being generated,
yeah.
and it's not possible for clinicians, especially with the number of patients they need to cater. And this can be a big problem
Mm,
in maybe uh, countries with a weaker economy or countries with have where they have large population with limited resources. Even with a developed company, there may
Yeah.
be a scarcity of resources with
Hmm.
respect to the number of the population cohorts to be catered. So, in such scenarios, with this tons and tons of data, it can actually help in speeding up the process.
Mm.
It can do the prelim analysis and a kind of triaging for the patients, and it can give a kind of, for an example, in A&Es, this can help in triaging patients,
Yeah.
something which is being done manually at the moment.
Yeah. And Dipankar, do you know this the whole thing of AI, for example, and these technological improvements, although it has improved our lives in one way or the other, especially the efficiency in timing and stuff, and the physical effort has reduced to an extent, and that in turn then had a negative impact on people's health and well-being. Obesity rate increase, diabetes rate increase, dementia, for example, and so many other health problem has increased. My kind of estimation in this is that even when the AI improves even further, and if it reduces the physical effort of human beings, one of the things that it will not have, if actually going to replace many people's job, but one of the things we'll always need is the health and the public health experts, because that physical um, a, a touch, for example, is very important, and also these problems are keep going increasing, and therefore the sport and exercise scientists or the health scientists or the public health experts, they are always going to be needed, and their job more likely is always going to be secure, because as this problem increases, so does the expertise needs. And I kind of make this suggestion that the future of NHS, for example, will then be relying more on the sport and exercise nutritionists, data and health scientists, and public health experts. Do you agree on that aspect?
Yes,
Hmm.
it's kind of that situation where we develop a solution, but then there are other problems which we need to cater to, which we need to address to. So
Yeah.
I agree with what you are suggesting, and I think we we are moving into a scenario where we need more collaborative and interdisciplinary aspects coming together to address challenges. And health is one such situation. Like
Abs-
as you mentioned, the scientists specializing in exercises or sports, they can play a key role here because uh, that something is important for the health aspect.
yeah.
And
No.
that's why, like in the health scenario, now I'm talking here with
Sure.
a
Sure.
data perspective. Like
Yeah.
earlier, when we talked about health, it was
Yeah.
only about the diagnosis
Yeah.
which was done by clinicians or in hospitals. But now, as we are moving ahead, we are also looking into the omics data, which is the
Mm.
genome aspect. We are also looking into the environmental aspect. We are
Yeah.
looking into the lifestyle aspect. So there are different aspects. And because these aspects are coming into play,
Yeah.
that's why experts like someone like you who is into sports and exercise and nutrition can actually play a key role here.
Mm. Absolutely, and I think these issues are going to be increased. Seeing the data, and yeah, no, and Dipankar, thank you so much for your time and providing this much needed insight about data science, AI, and I wish you all the best with everything that you do.
Thank you, Ayaz. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you.